Okay, I'm going to be converting this $20 3/4 inch kids guitar that I got on Craigslist into a Cuban trace. So this is a Stagg, it says handmade classical guitar. That's probably a generous description of it. These retail for about 80 bucks, I think, 80 to 100 bucks. They're nylon string, and they're for kids. I got this one on Craigslist for 20 bucks, and I'm going to be making a Cuban trace. So a Cuban trace is a Cuban guitar that is a smaller guitar, and it has 3 courses of strings, like a 12-string guitar, but with only 3 strings. So I've already put 1 string on just to test it out, but here we've got the original strings on. It's got the classical style head, which is what a Cuban trace uses. And I'm going to be changing the nylon strings into steel strings. In order to create the 3 courses, I'm going to have to do a little work on the nut. Basically what this is going to look like in the end is like there's a course, there's a course, and there's a course. So it's kind of spread out. That's actually what it's going to look like in the end. And so what I need to do is cut some new grooves into this plastic nut, and then adjust the back here so that it these strings are closer together. One of the upgrades I'm going to make to this guitar is I got a bone bridge and a bone nut. I got these on Amazon. This is a 80mm bridge. I can't remember what the nut is, but this was about $6, and this will improve the quality of the sound. The original nut on here and bridge is plastic, so here you can see there's the plastic one. It is the same length. You can just measure that before you buy it. It looks a little bigger in this view, but it's not. But that'll be, I'll just knock that old one out and put in the new one, put a couple drops of glue, and that'll help the sound. This bridge is actually too big. Like I said, this is a 3/4 guitar for kids. This bridge is for an acoustic guitar, so I'm actually not going to put it on. But if I screw up cutting the first bridge, I do have this one as a backup that I could put on if I want. So I'm going to put that new bone bridge on there, but you don't actually need that in order to make this conversion. But you are going to need some new strings. So these are Martin acoustic guitar strings. They're extra lights, so they go from 0.01 to 0.047. That's the gauge here, if you can see that. I got these for about $3.50 on Amazon. Okay, so I've taken off all the strings. I did have this, I put on this steel string just to make sure it would fit in there. But now I'm going to remove this bridge. So here's just the old plastic bridge. It just comes out. And I've got this new bone bridge. So I'm just going to slide that in. Hopefully it fits. A little tight, but that's okay. There we go. Bridge replaced. So now I'm going to start putting on new strings. And my strategy here is that we've got 6 holes back here, 1 for each string. And I'm going to string 2 strings through the first hole right here where I've already got 1. I'm going to string 2 strings through the 3rd hole, and I'm going to string 2 strings through the 5th hole, and I'm going to leave the 6th hole empty. So that's going to get my courses close to each other, and then afterwards I'll spread them out down here so that they're not touching each other. Okay, so I just made my first cut. I put the first E string in the first slot here. And then all I did was kind of I have kind of the tail end here from stringing it, and I just kind of lined it up into what looked about right for a course. I measured that and it ended up being about 2 millimeters. So I just measured out 2 millimeters from the string, and I used just this needle file. It's got kind of a sharp edge. I actually scored that edge. I scored the plastic with an X-Acto blade where I wanted to cut, and then I just used this file to kind of get down to get a good groove started. I've got this just cheap, this is just a cheap Chinese needle file set that you could get on anywhere really for a couple bucks. So I'm going to actually continue to file that away with a little bit broader file. Make sure that I'm kind of at the same depth as the other string, and then I'm going to string up the next string. The nice thing about this cheap classical guitar, it seems like the steel strings will work on it, and all the grooves in the nut are cut to the same depth. There's no difference in the grooves, because what you're going to end up doing here is this outside string is tuned to high, is the small gauge string, and then you're going to put the chord. You're going to do an octave course here, so there'll be a medium gauge string there. Same thing on the top. There's going to be a high string and a low string next to each other. Personally, I've never done this before. I've never cut these nuts, so having them all be the same size just kind of makes it a little bit more consistent for me. Okay, so I got my first course on. You can see I just jammed both strings. They got the ball ends there. I jammed them both through what is typically the E hole, and then I've got them spaced out here. At the bridge, I spaced them out 2 millimeters. I'm sorry. At the nut, I spaced them out. 2 millimeters, and then I strung it up, tried it out, and the strings were kind of hitting. So at the bridge, I strung it up at 3 millimeters. And what I did here was I just kind of eyeballed it, and I used that same file with the very fine edge to just seat some grooves there so that those will stay in place. You can kind of start filing from the top. You can start filing from the top, and then kind of work your way down the back end so that it is, you don't need much of a groove, but that will seat it in there. And now I've got a nice chorus already started. So this is the high E string and the D string. So the high E is on the outside, the D is on the inside. I'm going to start stringing up the rest. Okay, I just cut my groove for the second course. All I did was I strung these 2 up over the bridge. I kept the bottom one, the one that's closer to what would normally be the high E string. I just kept that one as it laid across the bridge, and then I spread the top one that would be closer to the low E on a regular guitar. I spread that one out 3 millimeters, cut a little tiny groove, and just laid it in there. At the top, again, this is the same idea right here. I just measured out 2 millimeters, and I cut it on the top. So let's see if you can see in here. Not that well. But I'm leaving the bottom groove as is, and then I'm cutting above it. So for each of these courses, I'm cutting one above the existing place there. So here I've got all but one of my strings cut. So I've got this high E string that I'm going to put in. It's going to be tuned to G. And like I said, I'm going to put it on this side. So this is the natural A string, and I'm just going to move over 2 millimeters, and I'll put it between what would usually be the E string, which we're going to leave empty, and what's the A string. So that'll be my third cut right there. And like I said, I'm just using one of these kind of sharp files to do that. Okay, I got all 3 courses on. I can take these strings, loosen them up, and adjust the action on any of this stuff just by filing the grooves a little bit deeper. Here is the nut. You can see some of the dust from me filing it. I left the low E string open, and then I just cut a new groove about 2 millimeters above the high E string, the G string, and the A string. So you can see that where I cut those grooves. Again, I was not trying to be super precise here. I did try to measure 2 millimeters, but you can read a lot online about cutting nuts and how hard it is and how precise it needs to be. I did not overthink it. I just used a needle file and just cut it. And I'll adjust the string action if I need to after I play it for a bit. But here you can see the strings, and this thing is ready to go.